Hey guys, and welcome back for another video. Today is actually going to be our very first Q&A. Hopefully we'll have some more in the future, and if you'd like a question to be answered, feel free to just leave it at the bottom of this video, and once we have enough, I'll go ahead and do another one. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a big thanks to those of you who watched the first video where I kind of told you guys about this Q&A. And also a big thanks to anybody who actually participated in the poll cards that I left up on that video. If you guys still want to get in on that and give me a little bit of feedback, feel free. I'll leave a link to it down in the description. But if not, I definitely got more feedback than I was expecting, and I think I know how to go forward with some of my video ideas. But with that, guys, we have about 6 questions, so let's go ahead and get into these. I'll do my very best to pronounce your YouTube names correctly, but if I don't quite get them right, feel free to yell at me in the comments, okay? Speaking of, Dracum Lethalderin asks, do you really enjoy playing Guild Wars 2? I don't really know how to answer this because, I have a YouTube channel dedicated to the game, and not to talk smack on Guild Wars 2, but if I was really just trying to grow some kind of crazy popular YouTube channel, I'd probably pick another game, right? Like, not to say that Guild Wars 2 isn't a popular game or that it's a dead game, because that's just a false misconception right there, but I don't know, guys. If I was just gonna make a YouTube channel and the sole goal of that channel was to become very popular, I'd probably play something like Fortnite or Overwatch. I don't know what's popular. But for a more straightforward answer, yes, I actually really enjoy playing Guild Wars 2. There are parts of the game that I do not like, and that kind of takes us to your second question. Is there anything you hate about Guild Wars 2? I know this is a cop-out sentence, but hate is a strong word. I would not say that I hate anything about the game. There are some things that I dislike, and those are some things that we'll be talking about in an upcoming series for sure. So I don't want to give too much of that away here. If I was thinking right off the top of my head, the 2 things that really bother me. Okay, we got 2 things. I hate the extra sigils and runes that you get from salvaging blues and greens in the game. I think that they should do something about that, because obviously you're not always going to get rare loot, and that's fine, but don't fill up my inventory with a boatload of crap. And the other thing that's bothered me for a while now, I just haven't really said a whole lot about it, is just Zerg content. Pretty much any kind of content, so pretty much all open world and world versus world content, where it's just huge groups of people slamming into each other, or huge groups of people slamming into a boss. It just kind of takes away the fun that is the Guild Wars 2 combat, at least for me, when what I'm doing doesn't really seem to have that great of an impact on the fight. It's sort of like, why am I even here? This can happen without me, and it just sort of kills my fun, so to speak. But I do see this as one of those things that could be remedied over time. It just depends. And that's sort of what I'll be talking about in some upcoming videos, so look out for those, wink wink. Next up, we have Kryptonizer, who asks, when creating a second character with whom you want to reach and play endgame PvP, what are some things to consider? Well, Kryptonizer, it's been a really long time since I've created my second character, but I still think I could try to answer this in a somewhat helpful way, hopefully. One of the first things I usually think about is what crafting profession I'm going with. Now, I know this is, all of you guys are pulling away. I said crafting profession, I apologize. But I often try to get a handful of my character levels through crafting, and I also think it's a really good idea to at least have some sort of crafting profession for the gear or armor that character is going to need. So like, let's say you're playing a heavy armor class, well, maybe you should use weaponsmithing and armor smithing to help you get some character levels, and then when you hit level 80, you can at least get some exotic gear just by crafting. And if you want to do endgame PvE content, you're also going to need ascended gear, or at least you should probably have some ascended gear. And again, you're going to need those crafts to be at that level anyway, unless you intend to get your gear through other means. Beyond that, I like to try and decide which maps I'm going to map complete, as that's another way that I like to level up in this game. I tend to just start on whatever starting map, and then I start completing the neighboring maps. Every 10 levels or so, I go back to the personal story and complete that for some extra XP and hopefully a few upgrades for some of my gear. And if ever I hit a point where, say, the levels just aren't there and I need them to be, that's usually when I turn to crafting. Additionally, I always try to make sure that I do my dailies and I get my daily login reward, because those laurels could help me get at least some core stats and ascended trinkets for any given character that I might be working on. I know this is a little all over the place. I'm just trying to answer this question to the best of my ability, so hopefully that's helpful. Next up, we have Ledieth, who asks, in your video you said you refuse to pug raids. Is there a specific reason for this? And yeah, there's obviously some kind of reason for it. For me, it's that I've never really played a raid before. So pugging raids for me would pretty much just be putting myself out there, only to find out that most groups don't want me anyway. I have no confirmed kills, and while I'm pretty sure I have the gear that's required for a lot of that content, I don't really have my rotations down, as a few of you guys have pointed out in the comments before. I am not a top DPS kind of player, though I would definitely aspire to be if I was playing raids, because I do understand that completing the content quickly is part of it. But at the same time, let's say that that wasn't the case, I had completed several raids before. I'm pretty sure I would still prefer a static group over a bunch of random people, because raids require a lot of coordination that random people don't seem to have. It's obviously going to be easier to coordinate with people that you can talk to in comms or at least in chat, and I don't really ever see a whole lot of that in the fractal pug groups that I normally go into, so I don't really expect to see it in raids. Next up, we have Naughty Mr. Monkey, who said a whole lot, and thank you very much, sir. I'll post this up here so you guys can read along if you so desire, but we'll be focusing on the questions. There are a few of them, and we'll just be taking those a few at a time. Firstly, what the flip is up with your playtimes? When do you sleep? So when I made that last video, I kind of figured this would come up. I usually sleep from about 7 a.m. until around 3 o'clock p.m. I know that this is probably crazy for a lot of you to hear, but I just like to stay up late. I'm kind of like a night person. I thought that that was an acceptable thing. And I won't blame this on Guild Wars 2, because I have been this way my entire life. It's been hard to go to school. It's never been really all that possible to have a first shift job. I just tend to stay up late. That's when I feel at my most complete, I guess, or at least my most energetic. Starting YouTube definitely didn't help that, because it's always easier to just cut out some sleep that I could have got before I have to go into work the next day than it is to try and wake up early, which I'm terrible at, and then try to get a video out before it's time to go to work. That being said, the only reason that my schedule is the way that it is because I want it to be that way. I'm just a night person. I don't know what else to say. Next, we have, what is your favorite Guild Wars 1 expansion? Well, my favorite Guild Wars 1 expansion is really cliche, and that sucks because your last question is going to have a really cliche answer now too. Oh boy. Can't wait for the judgment down in the comments. Well, my very favorite Guild Wars 1 expansion was Factions. I know that's a lot of people's answer, so surprise! But yeah, I really liked going to Cantha. I really liked the theming and the way that they did a lot of the maps. I liked that it had sort of a zombie element to it that wasn't quite the standard zombie formula that you see in a lot of other games. I loved Shiro Togachi as a villain and as a boss fight. It was just fantastic. I remember back then, it took me probably about 5 or 6 tries before I beat it my first time. And that's when I knew that the game had a little bit of challenge to it. That's something I always value in a game, is a little bit of challenge. So, Factions for me on that one. And finally, what is your favorite game of all time? Here we go again. Up until about a year ago, I probably would have said some other Legend of Zelda game, but right now, my absolute favorite game of all time is Breath of the Wild. I actually pre-ordered a Switch just to get that game, and even though it's my favorite game, I still have yet to beat it, mostly because I get absorbed in Guild Wars 2 related stuff, or I play some games with my friends, and the Switch just kind of collects dust for a while until I have a nice open weekend for that sort of thing. But I've invested so many hours because I've just been running around, I've explored all the maps, I've seen all there is to see, barring the final fight. But I just really like to see what they did with that game. They kind of reinvented my favorite franchise by making it an open world sandbox game. Kind of took the formulaic, you go to this dungeon and get an arrow, and then, oh, at the next dungeon, you use that arrow to get inside. And I kind of liked that back then, but now that I've actually played a game like Breath of the Wild, it just made me appreciate that kind of change all that much more. Zelda as a franchise is my favorite franchise, and right now, Breath of the Wild is my favorite game. Next up, we have Gavin Weiss, who asks, if you wanted to play other games, what would you play? Well, let's look at this question first. I don't really want to play other games for this channel, if I'm being outright honest. I just know that making Let's Plays takes way less time than what I'm currently doing, and I feel pretty terrible about the amount of videos that I post every week. It's about 1 or 2, sometimes it's none for a week, and playing another game might help me fill that void. I'd play pretty much any game that you guys wanted to see in addition to Guild Wars 2, but the Guild Wars 2 content would obviously always come first, like I said before. And if you guys are looking for ideas, I do like survival games like The Forest or Conan Exiles was pretty cool there for a while. I do play Sea of Thieves as of late. It's not something I play all the time, but it is a ton of fun whenever I do. The only thing I would prefer not to play is like actual competitive first-person shooters. I just personally think that's some of the most boring gameplay I've ever seen in my life, you know, and I'm not good at them. That's also a part of it. Secondly, we get what expansion for Guild Wars 2 has been your favorite and why? Now, this is actually a really hard question to answer for me. I did make a buyer's guide comparing the 2 expansions, but that was mostly from like a new player perspective. God, if I had to pick one, I would probably pick Path of Fire, guys, as my guide kind of leans towards. I am one of those people who likes to play games and not really have to grind for all the things, and Path of Fire, of the 2 expansions out right now, doesn't really require you to grind nearly as much as Heart of Thorns. That being said, I really feel like the map design in Heart of Thorns was brutal, and I kind of liked it. I was dying a lot when I was playing through that campaign, and it kind of just made me want to play that much more. Path of Fire, on the other hand, is a straightforward, almost a single-player experience, it felt like. I logged in, started the story, and I never really felt like the story was gated behind anything. I never really felt like I needed to stop what I was doing to make sure that I had all my boxes checked before I could do the next bit of content. I could just play the game. Now, you could chalk this up to just, you know, Tate likes easy content, so he likes Path of Fire. I just thought that Path of Fire flowed seamlessly between story steps, between open world content, whatever I was doing. I never really felt like whatever I was participating in was something I didn't really want to do, but had to do, if that makes any sense. Lastly, for YouTube, because I did have one on my Discord that I'll be doing after this, but lastly for YouTube, we have LOC? However you say that, I'm sorry. How did you start playing Guild Wars 2? What's your story on the game? Well, I started playing Guild Wars 2 because I played Guild Wars 1 since Prophecies, and I was a little bit of a fanboy. So when Guild Wars 2 came out, I pre-ordered it. I got the super duper deluxe edition with that amazing Ritlock statue that I still have to this day. But I don't really think that's what you were hoping for, looking for. So I'll tell you how I started playing Guild Wars 1. This is going to date me a little bit if anybody wants to try and figure this out, but I started playing Prophecies when it had been out for a few months. A couple of my friends in high school, there you go. In high school, they told me about this game called Guild Wars, and it was so much different than World of Warcraft, and all you had to do was buy the game and you could play it. All of these things just sounded great to me, so I picked up Prophecies, spent way too long in pre-searing, not realizing that I couldn't just progress that game like pretty much any other game. I basically just wouldn't do the main story. I kept doing side quests and stayed there for like a solid month probably. But once I did get out of pre-searing, I did go on to play all the other expansions, and I just enjoyed myself through and through. It was technically an MMO, but at the same time, once you left a town, you were pretty much on your own or with whatever party members you brought with you, and the content in those maps was scaled to be difficult because it was intended for up to X number of players. Elite skills were something you actually had to track down out in the world. You'd have to kill a boss and then use a skill called Signet of Capture to actually acquire those elite skills, so there was a little bit more prestige to elite skills than just, you hit level 30, here you go. There are a lot of comparisons I could make between the two games, but essentially, yes, I got into Guild Wars 1 on a whim because some friends in high school told me about it, and it ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made in gaming, at the very least. Last but not least, we have one more from Ada on my Discord. She asked, are there any screenshots that you'd like to show? Now, not to detract from how cool it is to take screenshots. I don't want anybody to think that I'm putting you down if you like that. I don't really take all that many screenshots. If I do, it's to make something for a video more often than not. That being said, I have taken a few screenshots from, I don't know, just cool maps, cool parts of maps. So I will show those while I talk here, but outside of that, I really don't take that many screenshots. Now, I would be more inclined to do that if I were, say, part of a guild or a big group of people that constantly did Guild Wars 2 stuff together, and there were some memes in there maybe. And then I'd have some better screenshots to show you guys, and I could tell you a short story about that. But as of right now, I am part of a guild, but it's a very small guild, so we'll just have to see. Maybe by the time one of these Q&As comes around again, I'll be more in line with that kind of screenshot taking. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for the questions. I do want to remind you guys again, if you want this to continue, all you have to do is leave some more questions down in the comments of this video. I'll probably wait a bit like I did on this last one, and I'll do my very best to make sure that we don't have many repeating questions, so I'm not just making videos saying the same things over and over again, right? But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for the questions, so I'm going to wrap this one up. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.